Lessons Learned in the Face of a Wildfire by Fran, Braga. I watched as the wind whipped the oaks above me, sleepless with worry, expecting to hear the crack of a branch crashing through my roof at any moment. But it was something far more ferocious and insidious that sprang me from my bed at 1 a.m. First I heard the sirens, then noticed the eerie glow beyond the trees to the north. Fire. I dressed in a rush, peered out every window, but couldn't get a clear view. So I grabbed my keys, called my dog to follow me, and ran for the car. As I drove around the curve to the highway, the vista opened up to reveal the flames, already engulfing the entire ridge of the Mayacamas Mountains and burning down toward the valley floor. I feared for the safety of so many friends who live within the bounds of the fire, but I was helpless to do more than send up hope for their safety. I had no time to spare. The wind was driving the flames my way. I drove back through shards of eucalyptus bark swirling through the air and dodged branches that littered the roadway. My heart pounded as I made a mental list of what I needed to pack. I announced the situation to my husband, who refused to share my concern. My phone lit up with messages from neighbors preparing to evacuate. I did the same, grabbing what I needed for myself and my dog, telling my husband I was going with or without him. I went without him. Lesson number 1. Ultimately, I am only responsible for myself. With the dog settled in the back seat, along with a small bag hastily stuffed with clothes, phone, charger, cash, water, a flashlight, and a box with yearbooks and photos, I drove away, not knowing if I would ever return to my home of 23 years. Lesson number 2. When it's imperative, I know what is important. Lessons Learned in the Face of a Wildfire by Fran, Braga. I drove into town with no destination, only a primal instinct to get away from the flames. I was not alone. Many others headed into Sonoma in the dark of night, the glow growing distant in the rearview mirror. But as I drove south, I found the eastern horizon also lit up, another fire burning on the same mountain range. An update on my phone later that morning would reveal the situation. 14 fires burning simultaneously throughout our valley and just beyond. I pulled into the high school parking lot to get a clear view, and found there a group huddled together exchanging information and kind words. I joined them. We were each from a different part of the valley, and obviously of different financial circumstance, reflected in the row of vehicles parked side by side. A beat-up pickup, a ranch truck with vineyard tools in the back, a Tesla, and my Prius. But right that moment, it mattered not one bit. We were fellow humans sharing a devastating situation and offering each other comfort. Lesson number 3. In the face of adversity, kindness and compassion prevail. Finally, a call from my husband, who realized for himself that the situation was indeed as dire as I reported. He was on his way. I drove through town in search of companionship and a coffee. The Safeway parking lot was full of people milling about, looking up at the horizon, watching the glow increase in area and intensity, everyone making calls. I found a few ladies inside sitting near the closed Starbucks counter. Not having anywhere else to go and not wanting to be out there alone, I joined them. I monitored the situation on social media, listening as they recounted their experiences and voiced concern for those who would not leave and those from whom they had not heard. It was universal. Everyone was more concerned for others than themselves. The magnitude of what was to come still had not quite sunk in. I honestly expected to return to my normal life after a few hours of fear and uncertainty. I couldn't have been more wrong. My husband finally arrived. We stocked up on fresh fruit, water, and snacks to sustain us for a few hours, and exchanged messages with neighbors who were now out of the fire zone and checking in. We decided to see if we could find coffee. A sidewalk cafe on the plaza was open and busy. We sat, our faces buried in our phones, searching for updates, and shared what we found with those at other tables doing the same. When everyone began to relate from where they had just evacuated, it became acutely apparent how widespread the fires were. They extended far beyond the boundaries of our valley, to the east in Napa, to the west in Bennett Valley, and to the north in Santa Rosa. The world as we knew it was burning. A friend sent a message offering breakfast and the chance to watch some television coverage. I spent the next few hours watching the visual evidence of the widespread destruction. But what troubled me the most was the personal loss and intimate pain of those I knew and loved. The fire erupted with such fury, people fled their homes with only their loved ones and pets, and the rest was now scattered as ash. I didn't understand it was only the beginning. Lesson number 4. The reaction to tragedy comes in waves. I watched in horror, the scenes perceived as a drama that could not possibly be real. I would feel my heart break, and then a reflex response would take over, and I would shake it off for the time being. There was no time now to grieve. I had to plan and react. But I noticed an unfamiliar lack of focus and the inability to make a definite decision. I was devoid of the energy to rally and push through whatever I would face. I felt the first sense of defeat. It would not be the last. Lesson number 5. There are times when powerlessness is inevitable and the next few days melted together. We sought new shelter as the fire expanded, staying with friends who offered a safe place only to be evacuated with them as their homes were threatened. The most important tools of the days and nights that followed were my phone and my laptop, which the writer in me threw in the bag as I rushed from my home, knowing I would need to write. Practically everyone I loved was within the fire zone. I realized one morning that all of my close circle was displaced just as I was. There was not a safe haven among us. We had been scattered in the wind like the ash of the fire that chased us from our homes, our serenity, and our security. But we stayed connected with constant calls, Facebook posts, texts, and emails. Lesson number 6. No matter where you go, those you love travel with you. As the fire grew to the largest in recent history, consuming hundreds of thousands of acres and destroying most of what it touched, I found myself oddly passive. There was no anger, no rage. My usual spirited reaction to anything that frightened or threatened me was gone. I couldn't fight this. It was, one moment. It was bigger, stronger, and more threatening. Nope, let me do it again. It was bigger, stronger, and more threatening than any defense I could muster. I had to run, admit defeat, and simply adapt to whatever it left in its wake. I felt an unfamiliar resolve to the possibility that my home may be gone. I had no idea what I might do if that were true. I simply did not have the energy or the imagination to conjure up the multiple scenarios necessary. I could only settle into the security of a temporary sanctuary and the knowledge that everyone I loved was safe, for now. Lesson number 7. Life isn't meant to be pushed around, and sometimes on the 5th night of its constant flow in all directions, through every hill surrounding us, the fire threatened the entire town of Sonoma. My childhood girlfriend in tow, we moved farther west. I once again drove away from the flames, without a plan, knowing there was no other choice than to gather up the few things that represented my tentative security and flee once again. We settled in and watched the reports all night, hoping the center of our tightly knit community would not be leveled. The morning brought varied news. Some had been spared, but as the reports of yet more loss of home, pets, and livelihood trickled in, I sank deeper into a place of suspended existence, filled with nothing but a numbness that softened the sorrow that was too intense to allow to the surface. I fought back tears and swallowed hard to hold myself together. I couldn't grieve yet. It was too soon. This was only one of many waves of reality that would wash me up on its shore, limp and exhausted. Lesson number 8. No amount of personal discovery, therapy, or self-help techniques hold you unharmed when the world burns. You are a victim. The smoke followed as a caustic reminder that the world I left behind was still under attack. I couldn't go outside, feel the sun on my skin, find a breath of fresh air, or hear the sound of the birds anywhere. I was trapped indoors, the stench of the acrid smoke bitter in my mouth. The days became a series of ordinary tasks: shopping for essentials, preparing food, taking a shower, all now a privilege that no longer could be taken for granted. The knowledge that over 40,000 people like me were evacuated, and some did not enjoy such luxuries as running water, electricity, and fresh food weighed on me. I felt the need to help, to reach out a strong hand to lift them up, but I was standing knee-deep in the mire of my own situation, unable to do so. We moved farther west to the Russian River in hopes that the air would be clean. I found a small motel, one of the only with an available room. I was concerned I would be turned away because of my dog. But the owner, a dark East Indian man with large, gentle eyes and a broad smile, bent the rules when he asked where I was from and learned I had been evacuated. I felt the kindness and compassion of a close friend emanate from him, even though we had just met. He gave me the best. I immediately felt my heart relax and my soul begin to heal as I carried my bag up the stairs and heard the sound of the birds for the first time in a week. As I led my dog to the room, the owner called to me and asked where I was planning to have dinner. I told him I had not thought that far ahead yet, to which he reassured me not to worry. He was fixing Indian food for a friend who was joining his family for dinner, and he would bring us a plate. I was overwhelmed with gratitude. Tears welled up that had been waiting to be released, and I thanked him from the bottom of my heart. Sitting on the deck overlooking the river as the sun set, I realized I had been humbled at the feet of this fire. It had consumed my life and caused me to live each moment differently than ever before. I found within the powerlessness a peaceful resolve. I no longer struggled to control the uncontrollable, and I learned to let go, at least for a time. My innate and ever-present determination to plan, orchestrate, and manifest my own destiny had met its match. I was defeated and enlightened at the same time. I was at peace with the temporary and found a sense of deep comfort in the simple moment-to-moment joys that interspersed themselves within this tragedy. I found myself being more honest in my emotions, saying I love you far more often. Looking into strangers' eyes and asking with a genuine concern how they were. I accepted charity gratefully and without the defense of pride. Living through some of the most challenging, horrifying, and painful days of my life has not come without some blessings and lessons. Lesson number 9. Everything that happens, no matter how difficult, brings with it something of value. If I pay attention and allow it, I will be changed, perhaps for the better. As the fire grew to the largest in recent history, consuming hundreds of thousands of acres and destroying most of what it touched, I found myself oddly passive. There was no anger, no rage. My usual spirited reaction to anything that frightened or threatened me was gone. I couldn't fight this. It was bigger, stronger, and more threatening than any defense I could muster. I had to run, admit defeat, and simply adapt to whatever it left in its way.